This is the Running Channel podcast with me, Sarah Hartley. Over here, we've got Andy Baddeley, and over here, Rick Kelsey.
Oh God, that's good.
And we're
That's
all
actually quite
working
good.
together in perfect harmony. There's a theme for today's podcast. We're going to be tackling the topic of, is running bad for your knees?
So many myths.
Did you enjoy the puns?
That was really good.
Thank you.
but
I would
also
love to say I wrote that. But
That sounds a lot like science, not banter.
Yeah.
I know.
So brace yourselves.
Stand by.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. There'll probably be more banter than science, but let's give it a go. Let's dive in.
So just before we started, and before we get to the crux of today's episode, Rick and Sarah were talking about whether, in fact, they wanted to travel to Paris together
Yeah.
or separately.
Rick just turned to me and was like, when are we going to Paris?
And then you said, slightly weirdly, anytime
you
want.
like.
And then I said, I think we should go together. And you replied?
I don't want to. I mean, it's, you know, if we go on the train, it's not that long.
Why don't you want to go together?
Just like, well,
Just like you like your own, your own me time on
a
travel time.
plane, there is not, like, we've travelled a lot together over the last few
We're not getting
years
a plane
as
though.
a three.
Train.
But like on a plane, on a train, on like on a ferry, any transport that we've had to get recently. Budapest last year, we almost did get a ferry. I just like my own time.
Well, you'll get it because Rick will have his aloe vera eye mask on.
Yeah, true.
I will have my
you
mask
know
on.
what? If you just leave
is
me
it- it's not
alone,
aloe
we
vera,
can
it's
travel
UV.
together.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I just had a
UV.
flashback to us trying to get to the World Championships in Budapest when Andy, only found this out afterwards, had to pull Sarah aside and go, Sarah, you really need to keep Rick in the game here because I think he's going to leave.
Genuinely, I still remember one of my favourite moments from when that happened. So if you haven't listened to that podcast episode where we, again, slightly lost our minds, it took us over 24 hours to do probably a 4-hour trip
We
to
booked
Budapest.
3 flights.
Yeah.
All the flight, like our first flight got cancelled. We booked another flight, went to another airport. That got cancelled.
Went back to the original
went
airport.
back to the original airport.
Yeah.
Then had to get a hotel. Booked a hotel. That hotel had overbooked, so we ended up sleeping on the
On a
lobby
sticky
floor.
leather sofa.
Yeah. Then we went back to the original airport.
Yeah.
Got our flight, but even that was a bit delayed. But anyway, my favourite moment from that whole experience was after the first flight got cancelled, when we had the naive, this will work itself out. As we were booking a taxi to get to another airport, I turned to Andy, who had the same expression on his face that I did, and we both went, this is actually quite exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
Little did we know 12 hours later we'd be like half asleep on a hotel room floor.
That was very exciting. And it did take us a long time to get there.
Yeah.
But of that 30+ hour saga, I actually only think it was about 6 or 7 hours into that saga when I thought, we're losing Rick.
Yeah. There was a really good moment when we'd got to the hotel and they had no rooms and you were just sat, they had like benches outside, like wooden benches, and I just walked out and I was like, where's Rick gone? And you were just sat on the bench staring into space, and I think you just went, mate, it's not meant to be. It's not, we just shouldn't go.
Well, so that was the Budapest World Championships last year. We're talking about heading out to Paris for the Olympics this year, which is really exciting. But also we're doing a little bit of running.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah, have you done any running this week?
I have, and lots of savagery in my Strava comments,
Oh,
as ever.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the best ones, people have picked up on last week's podcast where Rick used the incredible phrase that he was going to debut some thoughts.
I debuted some thoughts in my head.
Yes, that was it.
In your head, as opposed to the thoughts that you debut out of your head.
Well, actually, a lot came out of that because you guys told me to up my game by 10% because I was talking about getting from 9 kilometres to 21 kilometres for the Malaga half marathon on the 15th of December.
I actually got a bone to pick with you about this.
Oh, go on.
How far did you run?
So I did follow the 10% rule. I did listen to you two, and I did appreciate the advice.
Yeah.
My intention was to
that's a big
run
disclaimer.
my intention was to run 9.9 kilometres, right? So I was right the way through my run, going right, 9 kilometres done. Felt good. I checked my watch at 9.56 kilometres. I was like, well, I haven't got to do the whole KM. Just forgot. Ran 10. The buzz on my watch stopped me.
Rick. So you did an extra 100 metres?
Yeah.
How many aerobics was it though?
It was 2.2 aerobics, and my pulse ox was cheetah.
You're like the daily forecast.
So Rick's on it. He's ready. He's doing his improvements for this half marathon. And you mentioned the Malaga half marathon and marathon that we'll be at on the 15th of December. So there are still a few places available. So now's the time to sign up if you haven't already. If you've loads of people have been and had a look at it. We've already had loads of people signed up.
Yeah, I've been chatting to a few people who are coming along. Very exciting.
Yeah, so we'd love to see you there. I have been doing a little bit of running, although we are, ironically, or maybe not, maybe it's planned, talking about knees today. Yeah. I have had a little bit of extra knee pain come back. So the knee pain that I was rehabbing sort of diligently last year, it was definitely ITB syndrome, which we're going to talk about, iliotibial band syndrome, so the outside of my knee. That was on my left knee. And then out of nowhere, I've now got the same pain on my right knee.
No way. This is just coincidence that we're talking about knee pain and whether or not running is bad for your knees today.
Yes. So I don't want to give away any spoilers, but we have got answers to whether it's bad for your knees. So, and also talking about ITP pain.
So you can't run?
No, I did run around 10K Saturday and 10K Sunday. So
okay.
And how's the pain?
Just about manageable, but I decided to play it safe, and I know that I need to get back in the gym and do a certain few exercises that I was doing for my left knee. I do them on both sides anyway. Yeah. And I think in the lead up to my 5K, where I ended up hurting my hamstring, I had prioritized running, and my S&C had slipped. And so going from all the way through the marathon, doing twice a week strength and conditioning, to kind of once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks. I just think that
now, Sarah Hartley, TRC Meets, the podcast where we meet incredible runners with amazing stories.
Yep.
In the last week, we had Harry Judd.
We did.
Yeah. Now, obviously, over the last couple of months, we've kind of teased that this is coming up, and we talked about your reaction during the podcast. And you know, went back a couple of months ago, and there were certain noises that were coming out of Sarah that, to be honest with you, I wasn't particularly familiar with. I didn't know some of these noises had ever come out of her before.
You should take offence to that.
They were kind of mousy squeaks. But anyway, let's not go back into that. Let's talk about what you, the listener and viewer, thought about that podcast. Okay.
Have you got some comments?
Yes.
Okay, can't wait.
Comment
I
number
love
one.
how you've written them out.
What, instead of what?
Like you're so from
what?
As in you could have just had them on your phone.
Oh, we remember
true.
last week I tried to find comments and just couldn't get it. So comment number one. Kudos to the editor managing to cut out Sarah's involuntary sighs every 30 seconds for being in the same room as Harry.
Do you want to know the worst thing? Harry, if you're listening, just switch off for 10 seconds. He won't be listening to this. But so when it came out, there was obviously some content that went out on social media, and I shared maybe the running channel reel and posted it to my Instagram stories and tagged you and him in it and was thank you so much. He shared it to his story and I was oh.
Oh, there goes that noise again.
Audible. I was just sat by myself, and then when I saw the notification coming up, I did the squeak.
Yeah.
I did the squeak. Hey, he's a lovely guy.
Sarah's really enjoying this one. And this one, I've never seen Sarah so happy to do an interview.
Hey, what about this every week?
I'm so happy to do this too. Yeah. Look,
but it was
lovely guest.
Lovely guest.
Lovely
and people
guest.
Actually, one of the kind of running themes through the comments was actually about how Harry Judd was so enthusiastic about running.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they really liked that kind of enthusiasm.
He then shared the clip of the podcast opens with him talking about him and the bandmates running home from a gig.
Yeah. And he shared that clip as well.
So if you've not listened to it, go back and listen to it if you can.
Because it's a good one of we've had a real mix on TRC Meets of some people who have incredible kind of inspirational stories that you might not have experienced yourself, but you'd be able to kind of take something from it and take that into your running. Whereas Harry is this pure, he just loves it. And he's so relatable with his running.
Really is, yeah.
Of just getting so stuck in, getting it all wrong, learning how to do it, and now he's preparing for Amsterdam Marathon.
Can I ask a rhetorical question there, though? If he'd asked you the same question, would you like to get the train with me to Paris?
I would have said exactly the same thing that I said to Rick.
You just want somebody who said, sorry, Harry, who I'm completely in love with. I actually want my alone time. And I don't want to travel to the city of love with you.
The first answer.
Oh, okay.
Anytime you like. Can I talk about my running?
Yes, go on.
So I have a bone to pick with people who follow me on Strava.
Oh.
So hear me out.
Okay.
Obviously people love ripping me, Andy and Rick to shreds in the Strava comments.
Mainly
Recently I've had a lot of people who are so quick to rip me on Strava that I haven't had enough time to title it and add a picture.
The same.
So all of my Strava comments are becoming uninventive title, Sarah.
Yeah.
Right, I see.
Almost as bad as Andy's title, Sarah. Give me some time. Look, when I used to be the person that would like record a run on Strava or like straight away once I got back to my house, I would title it, I would do all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not now, guys. I'm sorry, but I do eventually come back.
Yeah, me too.
And do it and add photos. Just give me some time. If it says morning run, I'm not finished yet.
You're not, oh, really?
Yeah.
So you'll come, but how long would you leave it?
Sometimes it's like I run in the morning and then in the evening I'll add a title.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I actually used some of the comments as inspiration to add a title.
Yeah, same.
To
mine. That's what I did to mine.
And I gave them a credit because it was about
about
debuting a thought.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction to that, but let's get into today's podcast.
Okay, knees.
Yes.
So, Rick, you've obviously had some troubles with your knees that you hardly ever talk about.
No.
But today's topic is we're going to start kind of a little mini series of running myths explained. So if there is a myth that you would like debunked, let us know. Email in podcast@therunningchannel.com. But today, is running bad for your knees?
Yeah, so here we go with a little bit of science.
Uh-oh.
Osteoarthritis. That is the fear. Go on.
Are you sure you don't want to hand over to Andy for the science?
I'm going to come to Andy for much of the science, but I'm going
We'll
to cue him up with this stuff.
Okay.
We'll let you go first.
The biggest fear that people have is osteoarthritis. So that is the protective cartilage on the ends of your bones breaking down. So the question is, does running make that worse, essentially, by hammering on that cartilage?
Yeah, and the common wisdom has always been that it does. That's perception, everyone's perception.
And obviously I get a load of questions because of my problems with my knees. It's like, well, is that because of running? No, actually, which is, I suppose, is important to kind of hammer out initially. Mine, I had a hyperextension of my left leg, which is when your leg goes forward, so past your kneecap, which caused my ACL, so anterior cruciate ligament, to pop, and then had some damage to my medial ligaments, damage to my nerves.
And how did you, what were you doing?
Playing rugby.
And that's when the hyperextension happened.
Hyperextension. So
a few
I
years
had
ago.
an unstable knee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I then was not doing strength and conditioning. And then 20 years on, down the line, my knee pops while doing interval training on a hilly North London park.
On a gentle rise.
North London park.
Yeah. Right.
And this was during, this was, a couple of years back. And then I then started to do strength and conditioning, build up those muscles, which I'd not done previously, and then had operations that eventually fixed that pain. And now I run pain free. But obviously people come to me and think, oh, because you're a runner, this is what happened, which is where Andy's science comes in.
Yes, it's worth saying that if you do have osteoarthritis and you have got that degraded cartilage, then there's no kind of cure. You can't fix it necessarily. So I guess it's not like if you thought that it had been caused by something like running, and then you stopped running, it wouldn't repair your cartilage. It doesn't grow back. No,
cartilage doesn't grow back. Although there is some interesting new techniques where they're basically trying to grow cartilage in petri dishes.
Yeah. So
is it petri dish? Is that what it is?
That's what they have in labs to grow stuff. Yeah.
And also transferring cartilage from different parts of the body. Yeah. So great, but that's kind of new stuff. However, what they do on some operations now is, say you've got damaged cartilage, so osteoarthritis. What I'm going to say the word. What an osteotomy is when they switch the balance on your knee from one side to another. So obviously I have damaged inner cartilage.
Yeah.
So an osteotomy reshapes the shape of your leg, so the weight then goes onto the outer side.
So you reposition
the joint, and then the damaged cartilage is still in there, but it's not getting hammered all the time.
What I'm really enjoying is right then you've just lifted your leg up to straight. Immediately started shaking.
Did I?
Your leg,
Need to do some single leg presses, which you never talk about.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the reason we're talking about this now,
it's because I've got a fan on me. I've just realised.
So you're like, I'm so cold.
Any keen-eyed observers of the YouTube version of this podcast last week will notice that Rick looked quite warm. So he has
now has his own
into the studio,
personal
me
fan.
pointing at him.
She's caused my legs to shake, but I'm quite enjoying
On
it.
a completely separate note, your riders in your dressing room.
Yeah, only blue M&Ms for Rick. So essentially, the thought process has always been this wear and tear idea, a bit like a car, where the parts on your car over, brake pads, whatever it might be, over a course of just being used repetitively, they wear out the more quickly that they're used and the more intensively that they're used. And so that was the thought process of a lot of people saying, oh, running's bad for your knees. So clearly the more that you run, the more impact goes through your cartilage, the more quickly they're going to kind of degrade over time. But lots of recent studies have shown that that's not the case. So by looking at people who don't run, people who do run, there was one, I think in 2023 from Northwestern University in the US that looked at runners from the 2019 and 2021 Chicago marathons, like a large sample of runners, and showed no difference in fact that there are some studies that have showed that runners' knees might have better health long term, because there is some theories from what I was reading before this that the activity of running could improve. Well, it definitely improves muscle function around the joints.
Lowers your BMI.
Yeah. So and then you've got your general
body mass index,
mortality stats. Yeah. So people who run are likely to have overall better health. So that there's a I think what I read 25 to 45% improvement in kind of longevity.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? So the more you're running, runners can have better knees because you're lowering your BMI, your body mass index. So essentially, you're carrying less weight around, and therefore your knees are healthier.
I think with a lot of this stuff though, there's so many variables because there's not like not like you're either not running or running. You could run and be really diligent with your S&C. You could run. The biggest cause of knee injuries usually is overuse, and then that tends to be with newer runners because you go like, I've just discovered this new thing. I'm going to run all the time.
There are so many variables, but there are obviously there is a lot of correlation, isn't there, as well? And like there's a decent guidance, and there's the amount of studies now that show that running is not necessarily bad for your knees. That evidence now is far more abundant than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. So just to unpick some of those things, the fact that runners are generally, everything we're talking about is averages as well. So it's across a big population. There will be anomalies. There will be things where running does cause like sore knees and so on. We'll come on to that in a minute. But just on the general health perspective, I was just looking for the percentage, which is in general, runners have a 25 to 40% reduced risk of premature mortality and live approximately 3 years longer than non-runners. That's nothing to do with your knees. That's just you're reducing all of these other they call comorbidity risk factors. So other things that might contribute to death, like heart disease and things like that.
But I'm guessing that's the same. That will be similar stats to potentially like other
physical
cardio
activity.
Other swimming, cycling.
Yeah, if you are active maybe. Generally, then you're going to go down that route.
Yeah.
Back to the wear and tear thing. By running and strengthening your musculature, your ligaments and tendons around all of your joints, you're likely to make those joints more healthy because of the efficiency of the movement. You're making them, because you're putting them through repeated stress, you're kind of essentially tightening them up in a way. Like you're providing musculature to help support the joint's natural function. Also, I was reading that potentially the activity could help the body to produce more of what's called synovial fluid. So that's a viscous liquid that lubricates your joints.
Right.
Which again would help with that movement. Using the car analogy, you need oil when you run out of oil.
I see.
Or everything dries up.
So you're running and it's producing that. Itself. What's that fluid called again?
Synovial fluid.
Right. Oh, I see. So the impact produces the fluid which oils them up.
Yeah. Yes. And that is one theory from this study.
Yeah.
But the key distinction is that all of the studies, and some of them are meta-analyses, so they're analysis of other studies. Some of them are direct analysis of big cohorts of runners at things like the Chicago Marathon. They all seem to show that running doesn't cause osteoarthritis or lead to worse knee condition, and in fact, it might help with your knee conditions.
Right.
So give you healthier knees. The difference is that a lot of runners get knee pain, which isn't osteoarthritis related. Usually that's ITB syndrome, which I mentioned, so iliotibial band syndrome on the outside of the knee, or runner's knee, so patellofemoral syndrome.
So like your kneecap.
Yeah,
patella.
in the centre of the knee. Yeah. And that's not because the knee's being worn out through running.
But isn't the patella pain because you're not doing enough strength and conditioning and actually it's moved out of the joint slightly?
Yeah, it needs to track in the groove of the knee joint.
And it's out of the groove?
Yes, correct, yeah.
Like I saw there's a physio on Instagram called Gail Physio, I think, and she was showing there was loads of studies where like if you just move your leg tracking the patella movement, for lots of runners that it moves in like a more of an L or a J shape, I think, and then that's where it's like it's tracking wrong rather than just moving in a straight line. But so we've tackled running is not bad for your knees. I think we can all say that, but running may cause knee pain. I think an important thing to address as well is I had knee pain when I first started running, and it was definitely an overuse injury, and it was IT band syndrome. But that's why it's so important to go and seek professional medical help when you have an issue like pain with your knees, because it was all the exercises that I was doing was actually to do with like glutes and my IT band. It wasn't really anything to do with your knees. It's that kind of, your body will always take like the path of least resistance, and so that can cause knee pain even when the issue is actually somewhere else.
And that's the thing. So running inefficiently where you're not strong enough to do the amount of running that you're trying to do will cause knee problems, but they're unlikely to be, well, unless you kept running through really severe knee pain, and therefore you're doing kind of what Rick talked about, where you're forcing your joints to work in a way that they don't really want to, which is why you're getting sore. Then I think that could have really bad long-term impacts, in my opinion. But a lot of people's knee pain through running isn't kind of degenerative long-term health risks like osteoarthritis. It's the two things that we talked about, and they can all manifest in slightly different ways. But so often they come to the patella one. You know, if a lot of people spend time kneeling down and things like that, I think there was something going back years and years that was called housemaid's knee, maybe.
Oh, really?
Where a lot of people in a particular domestic jobs would spend so much time kneeling down that they could then get soreness around their knee.
I see.
But now runner's knee is the patella tracking, so your kneecap not tracking properly. ITB syndrome is the ITB, which is a fascia on the outside of your thigh that generally it can get inflamed where it crosses the joints at the hip or the knee, usually at the knee. And so, you need to do what Sarah was talking about. So you need to get to the point where your body can sustain the mileage that you want to do. And as a beginner runner, that might only be a few miles a week. And then as a really serious runner, there's loads of people that could be running 80, 100 miles a week, which is loads. You can't do that unless your body is kind of optimized and healthy.
I see.
And so you need to be addressing stuff away from the knee. It's very rarely the knee itself that's the problem. It's the glutes, the quads, which control movement at the knee, calves as well. Because if your ankle, knee and hip aren't moving properly when you're running, then something will come out of line. Like Sarah says, the path of least resistance will start to hurt.
It's like you can always spot a runner in the gym who's doing rehab because we're doing such weird specific exercises, like really slow calf raises or like real single leg, like really slow lunges or something like that.
If anyone's listening to this, go and stand in front of the mirror with your shoes off on a flat surface. Try to do a mini squat on one leg. So that means you don't dip the knee first, you push your bum backwards first if you're going to sit down. Then you let the knee come forward over your foot. If you can't control that movement, then you need to get in the gym and do some work, or just do it in front of the mirror. If you can't stop your knee from dropping inwards towards the center line of your body as you try and take it forwards over your toes, then that's a weakness that you could really quickly address.
Many of those in rehab. So many. Yeah.
Wow.
That was fascinating. Dare I say that occasionally we can do science.
I think we did just do science, guys.
I'm much more comfortable than I have ever been.
Maybe
Are you serious?
No, I think it was great. I learned something doing the research, and you guys didn't mess it up. So
superb.
Excellent. Well done.
Should we talk about grizzly bears?
Yeah, let's do it. You're listening to the Running Channel podcast. Up next, we've got the news, followed by your questions. Let's do it.
Right, we're going to get on to your questions in a minute, but first up, we got some news, and Rick's got something interesting for us by the look on his face.
Yes. That was quite good.
Is Harry Judd here?
Was that Harry?
God's sake.
Quick. That was quick.
Bears, go.
Yeah, so a couple of people sent me this on Instagram. The Banff Marathon that took place a couple of weeks ago, a grizzly bear stopped the race about halfway through, and you just see the police rocking up. But what blew my mind about this is people are like, why have you stopped? Oh, there's a grizzly. Oh, right, okay.
They're really chilled about it.
Yeah,
I want to know,
really
in
chilled.
that situation, do
you pause your watch? Yeah.
Obviously, life-threatening, there's a bear, all of that.
Do you make that excuse on Strava when you upload it?
The first thing, like the title would not only have the word bear in it, it would have a bear emoji.
Yeah.
I'd maybe do an Instagram live.
We need to go back to the early days of the podcast. One of the biggest things that you called me out on was using both the word and the emoji, because that outed me as an old person who didn't understand how to use emojis.
Yeah, but that's like, I went on a run and looked at some field emoji. No, but like a bear stopped play, bear emoji, that's all right. It's when you like...
One rule for you, one rule for someone else.
Yeah. No, it's kind of, it's when you use the word and then immediately you use the emoji. Right. So like if on text you were like, hug emoji.
Yeah.
You're like, what are you doing?
So...
we've never sent you hugs.
Well, it did kind of...
Yeah, did you awkwardly DM Harry Judd that exact text message? Hugs, and then the hug emoji. And then wish you could delete it.
Please, anyone who's listening to this is a safe space. Never tell Harry Judd about this.
Yeah. So just get back to the bears for a second.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, well, I'm going to be doing a bit of running in Canada this summer because I'm going to New Brunswick. And I was thinking...
Do they have bears there?
Well, that is what I looked up after. Right. So I was like, well, where are grizzly bears in Canada? Well, I can tell you. More than half of Canada's 26,000 grizzly bears live in British Columbia, with the rest in Alberta and the 3 provinces. Do you know what the 3 provinces are?
Nope.
Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and the Yukon.
And where's New Brunswick in relation to all of that?
No grizzlies.
So, hey!
Yeah.
So what would you, in a race, would you have paused your watch?
If there was a grizzly bear on the course... Well, the thing is, I would have paused my watch, yes, but the race director isn't going to pause the race because some people have already run past the grizzly.
Wow. I wonder, has anyone email in? Have you ever chosen a race based on whether there are bears there? Or I remember in Thailand, actually, I had to run over a snake when I did my ultra. Yeah.
Well, that's barely the same thing, is it?
Yeah. Andy,
hey, but imagine if I'd had to stop because of the snake.
True.
I would have thrown a hissy fit.
Oh my goodness. This is awful.
Sorry, Andy, news.
Yeah, slither into the next one.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's rattled. He's rattled.
Oh my. Oh my goodness me. I don't know what to say to that. I'm immediately trying to think of more animal-based puns, and I can't do it.
Welcome to What It's Like in the Running Channel office.
Oh yes, it's hard. It's hard being around me.
Yeah.
The Diamond League took place in Paris over the weekend, and they had to do that in a different stadium to normal because obviously the normal stadium is where the Olympics are going to be.
Yeah.
So it was in a smaller stadium. But
could they not have done a little dry run?
They
get it built a few months early.
They have done previously, I think.
Is it usually that they would have the Diamond League where they have the Olympics?
I think so. I think it's usually in the Stade de France. Not sure. But they had it in a different stadium.
Right.
But there were some absolutely incredible performances. And the one that I wanted to talk about was Faith Kipyegon, who is defending Olympic champ, but she's actually trying to win her 3rd Olympics in a row over 1,500 meters.
Wow.
And she had a child between her 1st and 2nd Olympic title, which is a pretty cool story in itself. But she just keeps rewriting her own record. So she ran 3:49, I wrote it down somewhere on here, 3:49.04 to run a brand new world record for the women's 1,500 meters, only a few weeks out from the Olympics, which is incredibly exciting. So I was watching that, and that was an amazing race to watch. And you had Laura Muir came 3rd, and she's not even in the camera shot, but she still set a British record. She ran 3:53.
Wow.
So that was just an amazing thing to watch, and it shows that I'm always biased towards the 1,500 meters, but when you've got Faith Kipyegon and we've got British interest as well with Laura Muir and Bell, who beat her at the trials.
Yeah.
And then in the men's 1,500, you've got the Inga Britson and Josh Kerr rivalry, plus the fact we've got 2 other amazing Brits in that, which actually was a news story that the British team was selected for the Olympics. Yeah,
so everyone's going now. Very exciting. But obviously there are people who miss out.
Yeah.
And I think especially when you've watched is it the first 2 people from the trials?
Yeah, if you run the trial and you're in the first 2 spots and you already have the Olympic qualifying time, then you have to be picked.
Yeah. But I just feel gutted for people like Hannah Nuttall, for example, who came first in the British trials.
And she was 0.65 away for this is the 5,000 meters from the qualifying time.
5,000 meters, which is just obviously you have to draw the line somewhere, but gutting. Yeah. I don't think I could ever be on a selection committee because I'd be like, just let them go.
Yeah, I remember being at Watford, the glamorous Watford, one year for a friend of mine who I used to train with, Hayley Yelling. I think over the course of 3 or 4 Olympics, she missed the 10,000 meter qualifying time every time, but by a total of 8 seconds, I think, over 4 different Olympics or 3 different Olympics. One year she was in Watford, and I'm pretty sure the time was 31:45 to qualify, and she ran 31:45.2 or something. Imagine that over 25 laps, and in a race where she was having to pass people in lane 2 and like
so could have got there.
Could definitely have done it. And I remember, no one I'm sure would admit to this from an official perspective, but there was definitely a conversation going on between officials to try to essentially move the time. Yeah. Move her finish time to just give her 3:44.9.
Really?
Or whatever.
Hang on, that sounds.
But they didn't do it.
Wild.
Quite rightly, they didn't do it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there was a conversation happening of like, come on, guys, come on, wink, nudge.
Yeah. What must be also like so gutting as an athlete as well is like obviously like the collective world is getting faster, but if like say as a runner, as a non-elite runner, I really want to break 20 minutes for 5K. And if it doesn't happen, like I'm not sure it will happen this year, then I'm going to try and do that next year. The qualifying times will shift.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you are so close to the qualifying time now for the next Olympics, it might be even faster. So then your goalposts get moved.
Yeah, and
it's
also
brutal. I just don't think I could be.
You have to do it again. You can't just hang on to it and say, "Well, I ran this qualifying time 4 years ago. Can I just roll it over?" You do get a window that's wider than just the kind of 6 months or of the year, but it's still that's the hard thing. So there's always 2 elements to it. You're fortunate if you're one of the best in the world, where you're just by racing and competing, you're going to run the qualifying time. Yeah. But there are a lot of people when they're trying to make their first Olympics, and this was a boat I was in at one point, where you've got to chase that time first, and then that might mean you can't plan your peaking for the Olympics because you've got to run a qualifying time in April maybe, and then you've got to hang on to that level of fitness through to the championships in August, which is a hard thing to do.
Right, Rick. Questions.
Starting with Matt, a new-ish runner from Virginia in the USA. How do you all handle the drive to compete against yourself? I'm very competitive, he says, and I think this comes out in running and trying to prove myself wrong. This normally looks like me going overly fast for some type 2 fun. Type 2 fun?
Where in the moment, awful, afterwards, great.
Okay. I think I am proving to myself that I can do more than what I expect. I know everyone's got a purpose, but how do I trick myself into thinking I've done something hard after going for a slower run or just doing some maintenance work?
Good question. I think we're all very competitive with ourselves, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head on what you've said, Matt. Every run has a purpose, so can you prove yourself wrong by going the right speed for a slower run? And like trick yourself into going, I've definitely been there where every single run I've tried to run a PB, like definitely when I first started running, all I was doing was 5Ks, and every time I went out for a 5K, it needed to be faster than the last 5K. But now can you go out and go, right, okay, I'm running 5Ks in, I don't know, 30 minutes, averaging 6 minutes per kilometre. I'm now going to go out for an easy run that is 5K, and I'm not going over 6:30s or 7.
Discipline.
Yeah, discipline. The challenge for me is finding some way to take enjoyment and like some kind of smugness, almost like I smashed that when you've done something easy. So you knew you needed to do a recovery run, you've gone out and done it, and you're like really proud of yourself. And I think you just need to cling on to the fact that it's what the pros do. So you're in good company. Yeah. But also it has a massive positive impact on the runs that you are focusing on going faster on. You can't do that every single time. And so you have to have these no ego runs, I would have called them, where you go out and run with friends or you're running along on your own and people pass you and you don't think, I'm just going to latch onto that person and keep you. You're like, no, I'm really proud of myself today that I'm going to not do that. I'm going to listen to the Running Channel podcast, stay nice and relaxed because I'm sure we're very relaxing to listen to.
At times.
Or strides, I would say. Because then you finish by doing something that is hard. So if you're doing like an easy run, then could you throw in some like 15 to 30 second 100 meter efforts, or 100 meter efforts,
where you're speed work.
Speed work, focusing on running form. It means that you finish like your heart rate's quite high. You feel like you've just done something quite hard, but actually the run that you've just banked is majority kind of easy pace. Yeah,
and try and also look back on the cumulative stuff that you've done. So like when you need to almost, you say everyone has a purpose, so you need to look back over the last month and be like, this is my little piece of the jigsaw that fits into, it's one of my 10 runs that I've done this month or whatever. And I know that if I'm going to run 10 runs, that will do them all faster, then I'm going to get slower.
Mm-hmm.
Question from Carl Wallace, although we have no idea where Carl is from.
Oh, let us know, Carl. Email in.
Hi, Running Channel Podcast. Do you know of any waterproof road running shoes, similar style to New Balance Rebel, rather than trail shoes? Weird that this has come up this week. I mean, I do run in those New Balance Rebels, and I really like them.
Yeah.
But park run Saturday, chucking it down with rain. The fair weather runner.
Yeah.
Proven at the weekend. No, I was there.
Oh, right.
So normally,
This really surprised me because I thought you've got a fair weather runner written all over you.
I have, but keen because it's my week.
Right.
No, because we do alternative weeks, me and Chantal.
Oh, right.
So my week. So normally get 280 our park run.
Mm-hmm.
On the nod this week, close to 140.
Really?
And it was just shocking it down. Torrential rain, like relentless rain. And I ran next to someone like Carl's talking who had the squelchy sound. So I had them for the whole 5K. And I was thinking, your shoes, I'm going to have to stare at what your shoes are at the end, because that was hard work listening to you for 23 minutes and 21 seconds.
You know what I love is when you is it if you've used
That's the time you run. Well done, mate. That sounds
mate.
good.
Oh, sorry,
Thank you.
very good.
It's very close to your PB, isn't it?
It's 13 seconds off.
Yeah.
Wow, in the rain. Very good.
Yeah, but it was cool. It was actually quite. I mean, I was dripping through, but it was cool.
Very
Remember,
soggy
it's very-
July weather we're getting here.
Yeah, it's very hilly in North London.
You know what I like is
It is
when
very
it's
hilly,
raining so hard and you've got so much water built up in your shoes that they start foaming, which I can only assume is from like washing detergent in your socks.
Yes.
But you start getting like bubbles coming out.
Yeah, but this guy was like, it was like he was squeezing a sponge on every footstep.
Wow.
But this Carl Wallace, where we don't know where Carl's from, is
really upset you, isn't it?
Rick's so upset about that.
But do we know any waterproof road running shoes?
Yes. So, couple of things here. Mostly you're going to get fully waterproof shoes with trail shoes. So like if you look and they say like Gore-Tex, they'll be fully waterproof. But a lot of companies do bring out for their like autumn winter collection splash proof or like rain resistant versions of their kind of typical shoes. So I know Puma do it, for example, and that's kind of an extension of their
They call it like weatherized. Sometimes people call it.
Yeah, and basically it'll have in absolute torrential rain. They're probably not as waterproof as like a Gore-Tex shoe, but it's that typical, you know, where you get like a build up around your toe of like in really wet conditions where like the water comes, like grit comes and just the front of your toe goes a bit like brown and muddy. Yeah. It stops all of that because it kind of makes the top of your toe like splash proof, so you could go through puddles and not have the water seep in. So have a look. Unfortunately, it's mostly in the UK, I would say, like autumn winter that those.
Yeah. It's hard, but then you could buy last season's ones and they probably get a good deal on it.
Yeah, they might still be there.
Or look at a trail shoe, which is more of a hybrid trail shoe potentially.
Yeah, like Innovate has the Park Claw.
Yeah, I don't know whether that one is waterproof.
No, but there are like road to trail shoes which are quite good. Perfect for park run where you need a bit more like traction underneath and waterproof because the grass is wet.
Before we go, the British Podcast Awards, Sarah.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for all of your votes, but please also do vote for us. A lot of people, I know I ripped into people last week because they weren't able to vote for us.
I know what you're going to say.
I figured it out. Because
no gaps.
No, so just put in the Running Channel Podcast. That's all you have to type, and then we should come up. If you type the Running Channel, we don't necessarily always come up. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
It's not our system. We don't control it.
Yeah, listener's choice, the British Podcast Awards.
Yeah.
Vote for us if you can.
I've also had some questions in about how do people send in questions. So listen carefully, email podcast@therunningchannel.com and send us a question. And please do let us know as well about running and love and your love stories.
Oh, yes.
That's an episode coming up soon.
Oh, that's going to be exciting.
Very exciting.
As a special treat to finish off the podcast this week, we're going to play you out with this wonderful bit of music. Thanks for listening, everyone.
I'm the last man on earth.
What is it going to be?
What are you going to play?
Last man on earth, you idiots.
Oh, I'm the last man on earth.
Yeah, just
I am. I'm the last man on earth.
I'm the last man on earth.
I cut my hand on next door. On the thorn.
I'm leaving all this in.
It's just so hard to hear what he says. I got my hand
Goodbye.
on the thorn.
Would you travel to Paris with Rick if he was the last man on Earth?
No. I am.
Okay, we are going now. Bye.
Bye.